Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have another Speller's mom on, Judy Stoltz. Hi, Judy. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So I'm happy to have another mom on here to talk about spelling because obviously anybody who watches my show knows that I'm obsessed with that subject, and that's what I want to talk about. But let's start in the beginning, like we always do. Let's go back to your pregnancy and the birth of your son Tyler. First of all, do you have any other kids besides Tyler?
I have two bonus boys, step boys, and then two of my own, or our own. So Tyler's brothers are 42, 39, 25, and Tyler is 23.
Okay. So they're all older, so it's not like he was your first child,
No,
right? Okay. So when you were pregnant with him, were there any kind of red flags, anything the doctor said?
no. It was a very normal pregnancy. He was full term. We actually induced at like 39 weeks. Just because I was getting so uncomfortable. And the only thing that might be a little unusual is that after they induced and my labor was progressing, it started digressing. And so it got to a point where I didn't do an epidural with my first one. And that was the plan with Tyler. But because it started digressing, they insisted on doing an epidural because they said, we either need to do that to let your body relax and progress with labor, or because we're going to need to do a C-section. And so that was really the only thing that was, anything different than my first pregnancy.
But the delivery went okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The delivery went great.
APGAR scores were good, all that.
All that.
Okay, how about his development? Was he crawling on time, walking on time?
His crawling and stuff, that was on time. His walking, it's hard to remember, like going back, like exactly like what's supposed to be on time, and now they're changing everything, which I think is crazy. That's a different topic. But it was about 14 months that he I remember my mom lived out of town at the time, and I was talking to her and saying, like, just giving her the updates on the kids, and said, yeah, and Tyler's still not walking, and she's like, well, don't worry about it. They all walk at different times. I'm like, I know. I'm just giving you the update. And it was literally like 2 days later that he stood up. And do you want to come say hi, Tyler?
Hi, Tyler.
People can see you. Put your face
Hi.
down.
Can I see your face?
Get your face all the way down.
Hi.
And that's how he waves.
Okay.
So we were in our living room, and he was crawling around playing and stuff. I used to tease that the cat taught him how to crawl. But he like stood up and he had done some furniture walking, but he never would let go of our hands or of furniture. And then he suddenly was perfect at walking. He let go of the couch and walked like 10 or 12 feet across the room to like the stairway banister. And then he like held on to that for 5 seconds and then turned around and walked back to the couch. And it's like he went from crawling to walking without falling. Where his brother, Trevor, who's 25 now, they're only 19 months apart. And Trevor started walking at like 9.5 months, but he did a lot of falling. It was walk 2 or 4 or 5 steps and fall, and, or sit down and then get up and do it again. Tyler didn't have that like in between stage. It was just from crawling to perfect walking.
Okay. And then how about how about words and speaking?
He was definitely delayed in language, but so were all of his brothers. So even not my biological, boys is, my husband, because I would bring up like with Trevor is like, well, he's not talking yet. And he's like, yeah, but, Bronson did that. And Brandon, the older ones, they did that. Don't worry about it. But the difference, I saw some difference with Tyler, is that one, like Trevor, when you spoke to him or said like, okay, like make, what does a cat say? Or what does a cow say? Or whatever. He interacted, even if it wasn't words, he was still doing a lot of interacting with us. And Tyler didn't do that. And also that like Trevor used to love to sit in our lap and cuddle and, read, we would read him books. And Tyler didn't, he was good with cuddling, but like sit on our lap, read a book. He was like not interested. He would sit by himself and flip through books, but didn't want us, to be involved with that. And we noticed, and I think it was before his diagnosis, was, the lining up of things. And and one of the things that really struck me is, I'm an artist and I've always given the kids different things, to play with, to paint with, to color with, whatever. And I had a set of markers that was like maybe 24 colors in the set. And this is before it's like, okay, what's red? What's blue? What's yellow? I started realizing that one, he would draw things, and sometimes it was just a simple line with a circle at the top and a line with, he would do very repetitive drawings. But he was taking the colors out in exactly the same order. And they weren't in a case where they were like lined up, and where he's putting them back. It was, after he was done with something, we just picked them up and threw them in a box. But he was taking them out in exactly the same order every single time. And his drawing started getting a little more advanced. Like sometimes it was in, an airplane or, something else. And at one point he got really into what's the game show where they open up the suitcases, money inside. Anyway,
I know which one you're talking about.
It'll come to us both in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And he would draw like a person in a suitcase with numbers on it. But again, he would take out those colors in exactly the same order, which, for like a 2-year-old was very advanced. And to be able to recognize 24 different colors, also was interesting. He got diagnosed right before his 3rd birthday. So about, I want to say like, would that be 36 months? So probably at like 32 months.
Okay. Was he speaking at all? Did he ever have words?
He had a few words, but very little, little bit of pointing. One of the things that struck me was, I had gotten diagnosed with, cancer shortly before, about 6 months before his 3rd birthday. And I ended up in doctor's offices that I wouldn't normally have been in. So getting, every doctor's office has different magazines, right? And one of them I was flipping through and had an article, and they were talking about the lack of eye contact, with kids with autism. And that was the thing that really struck me was his lack of eye contact. There were moments that were very, connecting. And when I go back and look at pictures, I can see some of those of even where like he's engaging with his brother and very playful and very, and you could tell that there was that connection, the eye contact, but not like, I remember like breastfeeding, like where, my first son would make a lot of eye contact and Tyler was just kind of just feeding. And that was one of the things that was really where I started insisting on like, no, there is something different. It's not just that he's not talking yet. It's not that he's not, showing, the recognition or wanting to participate, like in, what sound does a dog make or whatever, or the reading, or, it was the eye contact for some reason that for me, like really, really hit. And he was he could be a very affectionate, kid, but yeah, that was one of the things that stood out for me.
So how did you end up getting him diagnosed?
So I used to be an HR manager, and as part of my role, we would do community service stuff and work with United Way. And as part of our annual campaign, I would take employees to different agencies. And we happened to that year visit the Easter Seals. And they were talking about how they did early intervention, and, with kids with autism and other stuff. And that after that, then the regional center took over. And for some reason, I was just like, okay, well, then I need to, and they said, 3. And that's where I said it was right before his 3rd birthday. So 3 to 4 months before his birthday, that I was like, I need to get on this. Like, I need to get him in and get him diagnosed, or have him evaluated. And that's kind of what happened. I'm in Southern California, and it really didn't take too long at the time to, get an appointment. And we really, I don't think we ended up doing anything with the Easter Seals. We ended up just going through our local regional centers, and, they set him up with some of the therapies, ABA and speech and stuff. And then his birthday is early January. So we then, just a couple months later, got him diagnosed by the schools. And then he became, got into their program for the autism, or for special needs. But
So you didn't have any regression or particular incidents like some parents describe that their kids were developing normally and then all of a sudden they got sick and then they had a regression or any of that. You kind of steadily saw it all along.
it was just kind of the consistency. And there wasn't any like major regression or reaction to any,
Mm.
jabs.
Mhm.
Uh, I definitely early on, and it might have even been like right around, his first diagnosis, we had gone to a seminar, local seminar, and then there was maybe 15 parents there. And I don't even remember who it was. It was a local mom and doctor. And, and 23 years ago, there were still a lot of kids out there being diagnosed, but not necessarily, not a lot of information, not a lot of support. And the main thing that stood out from that meeting, that seminar, was that she had said that our kids are the canaries in the coal mine. Is that, there's so many things in our foods and in our environment and in our medicines and, whatnot, that might be perfectly safe for other people, but that our kid, these kids with autism, for some reason, their bodies are chemically, emotionally, mentally wired different. And that, just like a canary in the coal mine, is that, something that's not enough to kill us yet, they're reacting to very, very strongly. And so I do believe that, that all of those things, whether it be the jabs or the medicine or the foods or, the air, the water, all of these things, I think that all kind of works together. And that our kids just, their bodies take things in and process things differently. Tyler, early on, I want to say he was probably 6 or 7 years old. I wish now that I had like documented all this stuff, but now it's on memory. But I had read a few different things about the gluten and casein-free diet, and decided, what do we have to lose? And with her comments in the background of, that the foods could be a big piece of it. And that did make a huge difference for Tyler. He, and one of the things that stood out to me about it was that how their guts are leaking. I don't remember all the pieces to it, but that the proteins from the gluten and the casein enter into their bloodstreams before they're broken down the same way that they are in the rest of us, and that it gets into their brains and actually becomes as addictive as heroin. And, when I thought about how he could literally, and I've heard other parents talk about this, where they could literally like sniff out, the gluten in the house, whether it's crackers or bread or, whatever, like they're like hunting it down and finding it just like a drug addict. And so I was like, okay, again, what do we have to lose? And the the biggest thing that we noticed was one, he started sleeping better. And part of that, I think, was the congestion, which was probably more the casein, the milk proteins. He was always so congested, and like, I'm going to be gross here, but he would have green snot, like the color of my dress, like green
Mhm.
snotty nose constantly. I mean, I would get to the point where I was just like wiping his nose, tossing it on the
Mhm.
ground, like, wiping it on my jeans, because I was just like, you just couldn't keep enough tissues around. And he was so congested, and he breathed heavy. And at night you could just hear him going,
Yeah.
and that disappeared. And he used to have the darkest circles under his eyes, which run in my family to begin with, but they were like 3 times darker, than anybody. And for a kid, you just don't have those kind of dark circles. And that was probably from the lack of sleep. He stopped taking naps at probably 2 years old, and was living on 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night, which meant we were trying to live on 3 to 5
Mhm.
hours of sleep a night. And then he also didn't put on weight. It didn't matter how much he was eating, he wasn't putting on weight. And not that you want a heavy kid, but here he was, and that's why I think he was like closer to 6 or 7 years old. He was still wearing like 2T and 3T pants, because even with a diaper, other pants with a lot would just fall off of him. And so, they were 3 or 4 inches too short, but that was the only way we could keep the clothes on him. So, so that helped tremendously. He started sleeping better. The congestion went away. Um, he started putting on some healthy weight, and he did have more attention. There was increased eye contact and more attention to the things going on around him. And so we stuck to that pretty religiously, as much as we could, like even taking like, gluten-free pizzas and brownies and whatever to birthday parties, if that, so that he could still participate. And we did that for a good 3-4 years until it got to a point where it was just much harder to monitor him. He was making food selections when we weren't present, like at school or stuff. And as much as we tell him, like, don't give him the cakes and cookies, the schools didn't really understand. And it wasn't an allergy like peanuts that, you can say like, you can't have it at all in the classroom. So anyway, enough of that, but that really helped him, quite a bit with that.
Mhm. So you just mentioned school. So what kind of school did he go to? Did he go to a regular public school or?
His entire time was in the public schools, and our school had recently started, and it was based off of another school that had been successful having like a strictly autism room. So his first couple of years, like pre-K, or I think through kindergarten, were general special needs schools, and and we seemed to have good experience. Everybody was pleasant enough. I wish I had been more involved. Like I said, I was working a lot, and my husband was more the person picking them up and taking back. Uh, but they seemed to have good programs. They had like specifically sensory rooms, set up. Starting in first grade was when they started a program that was directed specifically towards the autism population, and and had said like he's a very typical, autistic non-speaker. I don't ever remember Tyler getting a diagnosis of apraxia or dyspraxia. That's not something I was even on my radar, but I don't have any memory of even hearing that word until he
I'd
started
never heard the
spelling.
word until I met all the spellers.
Some people his age have said that they got that diagnosis, but like there wasn't really anything to do with it. But it
Mhm.
wasn't even something I heard. But so they had programs that were specifically targeted for them, and we trusted them. It was like we didn't know, and he seemed happy enough. He did go through some periods, and we kept trying to ask for more inclusion. Um, and he had some behaviors, not like anything real severe at school. always got rave reviews of how, you know, I'm going to say compliant, he was. He wasn't, he wasn't one of them that's throwing chairs around the room, or ripping things off the walls, or he wasn't really an eloper. Occasionally, he would run, but he wasn't like running out at school. And for a long time he was that way at home too. As years went by, I think that at school he was still able to like keep his composure. And then, he went through a period where he'd come home for a couple of years, where he'd come home and literally just run out of the car into the house and on the floor for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, daily. And, nobody could really tell us there was anything going on. And the next day he'd be up and out the door and, happy to go to school again. So, I don't know if that was, we haven't started digging into any of that. And, someday he'll want to talk about it, but, he's not there yet.
So something was going on at school, you think, that he was upset when he was coming home, but he wasn't getting upset to go the next day. So it's not like he hated school, but maybe he was just exhausted in some way. I don't know.
It could have been, of just keeping all that control. It could have been just that he needed to come home and decompress. And we have asked him about ABA, and that was more in the home. So
They didn't do ABA at school?
They did do some at school, but it was also something that was with our regional centers in California. It's very common that that's something that's given very quickly, like the first thing, and they want to do 40 hours a week, or 20 hours a week, something like that. And I think that at first there was probably, quite a bit of benefit from it. Who knows? But that is something that we asked him about, and he did say that ABA for the most part was useless and kind of torture. And he's used the words of, humiliating and demeaning in relationship to that and other services, that are currently provided. So I think that there was a point that it got to that he knew he was capable of so much more, and he was being so underestimated and not being given the opportunity to learn, and and to show what, and have a way to show what he knew.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask. Were they trying to teach him anything academically? Were they trying to teach him math, reading, anything like that? Or was it just like life skills?
So until high school, and even in high school, there was some academics. And so like he can make you a Google slideshow on his favorite US president. Okay. Now it's going to be copy paste. He knows how to copy the pictures and copy some text out of Google and put it into the slide. And probably 80% of it is associated or relevant. Occasionally he would snag things that aren't. And now I realize that that's, probably the apraxia, is that he's just getting into the habit of doing it. He's made 1,000-page Google slideshows on Legos, and matching up a minifigure with like a movie character and stuff. So it's like but that's not school related.
Okay, but he knows how to use a computer.
Yeah, and so he did have, they did do history. We knew that history was one of his favorite subjects. They did math, but it was never much more than maybe, complex addition. I don't think that they ever really got to algebra or something, which, fun fact, the other day when I was, about a month ago, we were doing a lesson with something related to mathematics. It wasn't completely mathematics, and asked him, how, give me a word that tells me, how confident you are with your skills with, basic, addition, subtraction. And he said, he spelled excellent. and I said, how about algebra? And he said, great. And then it was like, geometry, good. And said calculus. And he's like, good. And then it was like trigonometry. And it was like something like, like not so good. It's like some word that kind of meant that, but he was still just using the words. But it was like that he knew the maths and was like even grading them and stuff. And I know that he never got anything more basic than that. Like they were like so proud that he, was good at money, that he could always figure out the money stuff. And now we know, and I was like, well, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yay.
And we always knew, Tyler had shown us different things that we're like, we know he's smart at some things. Is like if you got him a new Wii game, he didn't watch somebody else, to learn what the rules were and to figure out, how to do stuff. He was really good at, figuring some of those things out by himself. Building Legos. He could build super complicated Legos. And occasionally we would have to he'd get to a point where like, okay, you got off by something, and we'd have to go in and help him figure it out. But he could follow those instructions. Occasionally we needed to help him find a piece, because, he was building stuff that was over 1,000 pieces.
Well, how was he communicating? Did he use Proloco or did he just type or what?
We tried the PECs and but that I knew at the time how limited it was, and tried to myself make extra things because they only gave us maybe 40 different things and 10 different foods, and I'm like, okay, we need more than that.
But was he able to use it? I mean, did he, just for people that don't know what PEX is, PEX is picture exchange system. So it's a picture of something like, so if you want a drink, and it's attached with Velcro and you'll take the picture of the cup and hand it to somebody and, oh, you want a drink, right? Or a picture of goldfish or pretzels, whatever you want, you choose, you take the picture and you hand it to somebody.
Right. Yeah.
So it's it's not like you're having a conversation. You're just saying,
right.
Drink, eat.
So we used that for maybe, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, but it wasn't, he wasn't very interested in it. He wouldn't initiate it. He did start doing more of the like grabbing our hand, to take us to what he wanted help with, or what he wanted out of the fridge. And so, so for the most part, it was guessing, and he had some speech, but but like if we would ask him, do you want, oranges, bananas, or apples? And then we started noticing like, okay, well, it's always the last one. Do you want apples, oranges, or bananas? Bananas. It was always the last one that we offered him. It was never, so we started realizing, okay.
Wait, but is he saying this or he's doing it with PECs? Like, how is he answering you?
This was with speech.
So he would say the word?
We didn't use the PECs.
So he's saying the word now? He would say bananas?
He could say words, but it wasn't.
It's unreliable.
Like if he was wanting strawberries, he's not saying strawberries. We would ask him and say like, okay, here's your choices, instead of using the pictures. Here's your choices of what we have. But yeah, it was always the last one. Do you want, pasta or chicken nuggets? But if it was chicken nuggets or pasta, it was going to be pasta, so it was always whatever our last choice was. So we started realizing, okay, that's not reliable. Like that's not really
okay. But so I don't know what age we're talking about, but now he's actually saying words. It's just unreliable.
Yeah. I would say probably 5, 6, 7. I mean, he had some words, but some of them weren't clear. It wasn't, okay. Yeah. So I said like early on, he definitely didn't have the words, but yeah, he had some words, but it wasn't anything he initiated. It wasn't like he'd just start saying pasta.
Right. You would ask a question.
We would have to question him, give him the suggestions, but then we realized, and I guess that might be considered maybe echolalia. He didn't do a lot of like reciting stuff, like some kids do. He didn't really do that. but then over time, and like as he got into like his early teens, he started talking less and less. Or when he did speak, it was so quiet you couldn't even hear him. And I've since spelling has started, I've reflected back on that and thought, I wonder if he was talking softer and softer because he knew this isn't really what I'm wanting. This isn't really anything, or it isn't what I'm wanting to say. Um, since spelling, his voice has come back and it's very loud and it's even more unreliable. And he's constantly telling us, don't listen to what I say.
Right.
Don't listen to what I speak, only listen to what I spell. And
Right.
yeah.
All right. So, but he is using the computer though. So I'm interested now about spelling. Like, how did we find out about spelling? But I don't want to get past where we are and on the timeline with school. So did he go to school till he was 21?
Actually, till 21. He's in California. They can go till 22 in their
Okay.
post-secondary program, or until the semester that they turn 22, which would have been through, I don't know what year now, 2024. He should have. But yeah, let's back up. So yeah, we knew that he could read. We knew that he could spell, or because they would do spelling lessons, and he was always 100% accurate on his spelling in class. They would he got to a point where he would no longer do it. I did get to a point where I could get him to read to me. Like we would alternate paragraphs and he'd read out loud to me, from a book. And like the school would send home whatever book they were working on so that we could be doing the same thing they were. And but that again also like started reducing. Like they would say, like, ask him a question about something that's on the page, maybe that's a picture on the page, and sometimes he'd be able to like point to like whatever was being referenced, like if it was like the kids going down the slide, okay, point to the kids going down the slide. And sometimes he'd point to the kids and sometimes he'd point to the dogs. Well, now we know that's the apraxia. If we tried to ask him a question that was related to a prior page, he didn't seem to be able to answer those kind of questions. And but we knew that he could spell, he could read, he could write. He can type. And that was early, that was second, third, fourth grade, definitely, that was going on. But it was never, there was when they did like the cognitive testing, every whatever years that they do the the testing for them, there was always the label of that he's able to read these things but he's not comprehending beyond like a first or second grader. It was kind of, they weren't putting him at like a 2 or 3 year old, but maybe a 6 or 7 year old. And that never really changed. And so even as he moved into high school, and even though they might be doing a history class or or he would go into like the English lit class, they weren't testing him because they didn't have a way to accurately test him.
Wait, so when he was in high school, he was going into classes with kids his age?
A couple times a day, and it was probably the like remedial, like English lit. But I was happy that he was doing something outside of the other room. He never needed a one-on-one. He typically, I think, was had like an aide that maybe had 2 to 3, that they were just helping them stay on task, with whatever it was that they were working on.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also was very involved in like the art stuff. So like every semester, especially in high school, he loved ceramics. In fact, he's taking a ceramics course at the college. We're doing that together this year.
So if he was doing art, then his fine motor skills have to be pretty decent.
His that's one of the things that's really interesting is that from very early on, we had people coming into our house and working with him and saying like, oh, his fine motor skills. And I'm like, well, explain that to me more, because he can hold a pencil, and he holds it appropriately. He writes. He was picking up these markers, and they weren't the big fat kid markers. These were like your Crayola long, adult markers, basically. But washable. And I'm like, he could use scissors. He feeds himself, although he still wants, even at 23, he still prefers to use his fingers.
Mhm.
We have to remind him, use your
Scissors
fork.
are a rough one, though.
Yeah. But he could do the scissors and the pencils and all of that. And the writing and typing. But nobody ever mentioned that fine motor had to do with the mouth or the tongue or the eyes or some of those other things. So yeah, he had the fine motor skills, but I know, like, looking back too at some of the different evaluations, and like he would be shown a pattern of blocks, and they want to see him either put them in the row in the same order or what the next sequence is, or stack them a certain way. And like I said, Lego, I mean, talk about fine motor. I mean, that's definitely fine motor. But yeah, so he didn't. So I'm like, I don't understand what you mean by he's got a problem with fine motor. But the apraxia makes it so that the what he's doing or how he's carrying things out, or like the pointing to things, picking the right letters on the keyboard. He's able to do it, but now we know it's more the loops, it's more the habits, it's things he's practiced and practiced and practiced, versus that these are. And I think that's why the Legos worked, is that even though each design is different, it's still find the piece, put it in the right place, find the piece, put it in the right place. And that's different than, that I've got a thought in my head and I need to figure out how to put that all together, on from the keyboard, or from the, using my hands and writing things out. I don't know all the stuff, that goes behind the fine motors, but his fingers, he hasn't had a problem with. But the pointing to the right things, I do remember the, like, he can't identify a tree. I'm like, he knows damn well what a tree is. We all know, he knows what a tree is. I remember one day that came home and they were so excited. Like, he pointed to the wheels on a car. I'm like, he knows what the wheels on a car. So I guess this all kind of goes back to, like, we knew he was smart in certain areas. We knew he could figure things out. We knew he could, build things, and that he could spell and that he could read. But we we believed them when they said that he was cognitively only a 6 or 7 year old.
Okay, so how did you find out about spelling? I think I saw, did you read Underestimated? Is that how this all started?
Yeah, it was my
How long ago was
brother's.
that?
That was almost 3 years ago.
Okay,
Um,
so he's 23 now, right? So that he was 20, so he was still in school.
yeah, he was still in school. And yeah, it was the weirdest thing because my brother's one of my brother's best friends, his girlfriend at the time, had read Underestimated, and she was like, I was so struck by it that I'm even looking at becoming a practitioner, and I think that this would be great for you and for your son Tyler. And we had just seen them at my nephew's wedding a few months before. So she had sent me this, and you know, he's 20. How many people have referred, books and therapies and
Yeah.
drugs and
Especially people that don't have an autistic kid, when they try to help you, you're like, yeah, okay,
yeah,
thanks. I'm
and
like,
and
you don't
and
know what you're talking
vitamins
about, but
and
thanks. Yeah.
yeah, all these different things and
Mhm.
all these years, and nothing had made like big changes. But for some reason, I was like, I looked it up. I'm like, okay, it's $20. I haven't looked at anything new in a while. I don't know what it was that I was like, okay, I'll get it. And my mom and sister and I, about once a year, we'll go out to Palm Springs. My sister has a place out there, and basically all we do is read and drink and eat and nap.
Mhm.
It's just a good decompress, and I just took that one book with me, instead of, like, fun reading. Here I take this book, Underestimated, and I can still remember, just I was sitting outside, beautiful day, reading the book, and I just had tears running down my face. And happy tears, tears of release. Like I couldn't stop reading it. I couldn't put it down. I'm going to start crying right now because it was just JB put into words things that I didn't even want to admit, to myself, yet alone say out loud. And then to see, to hear his story with his son and how much they had done, I felt like, yeah, us too. And that it sounded like Jamie might even be more severe. I don't think he even knew that Jamie could spell. I think didn't even know if he knew how to spell his name. And to be like, okay, if this, if there's even a partial truth to this, I've got to check it out. And when they started talking about that it's in Virginia, I'm like, that ain't happening. I'm like, that's going to be tough for us to do. Tyler hasn't been on a plane since he was 6 or 7 years old. We're working on that because he wants to travel. Then he mentioned that there was a place in Newport, which is only a couple hours from where we live. And I was like, well, that I can do. So I started Googling and sent off an email to iAsk. And funny thing is, didn't get a reply. And about a month later,
so the viewers know, iAsk is the website for Spelling to Communicate.
Yes. And yeah, so about a month later, followed up, and they sent me a list of practitioners in the area. And I said, here's my zip code. And it's funny because they gave me practitioners from Sacramento to San Diego. And I'm just south of Santa Barbara. And I'm like, okay, Sacramento ain't nowhere close. But there was one only 20 minutes away. And come to find out, she had just gotten certified. So it was kind of like the timing it was meant to be. Like if they had sent me a list a month before, she probably wouldn't have been on the list. And I would have been like, okay, where else are we going? And so we started with her, sent her an email, and she's like, I'll come out and do the first one for free so you can see how it works and see that he can do it. And then we'll talk about from there. And we started in January of 2023. So he's been doing the spelling now for 2.5 years. And just like so many people, like, that first session, you're not sure what to expect, but just the way that she came in and talked directly to Tyler. And I know you're in there, and I know you're intelligent, and I know that this is going to work for you. And, the first day he, spelled something that my husband looked at me, he's like, how is that even possible? Like, I don't even know how to spell that. And he very quickly moved from the 3 letters to the 26 letters. And I'll say it, like, a lot of times people say, how long did it take? And people talk in months. And I've been trying to say, I'm going to say hours of, working with a practitioner, because if we were doing 2 to 3 sessions a week, and it was in less than 70 hours that he was spelling significant opens. And one of his first huge significant opens was, Mom and Dad, I don't want to go to Apollo, which was his post-secondary program, which I want more from life. I know it's respite for you and Dad. And he was so dysregulated spelling it that I wasn't home that day. And my husband kept trying to interrupt the spelling session because he's like, this is bad. He's so dysregulated. This is bad. He's not going to be good after this is over. And his practitioner was like, no, he wants to get this out. He wants to get this out. He needs to get this out. We need to know what's going on. And
so hold on a second. Apollo is what? That's a program that he went to beyond school? Because he was still in school, right?
Well, that's so they go through high school through age 18. Mm-hmm. Basically age 18, and then they have up to 4 more years through the age of 22, and it's called post-secondary.
Oh, okay.
And so Apollo was the name of his school.
Oh, that he was in at the time, and he didn't want to go anymore.
And the post-secondary is majority, probably 80% life skills. They do a little bit of other stuff, but it's majority life skills. And yeah, so yeah, I know it's respite for you and Dad, but I want more from life. And it was literally.
So hold on. So wait, so let's back up. Because you're using S2C lingo, so I want to explain for people that don't understand.
Sorry.
Okay. They start with three boards, which
Yeah.
is a third of the alphabet on each board. Then they move up to one board of the full alphabet. Then they move up to the laminated board. Then hopefully they move up to the keyboard. Eventually, what I want to get at is if he's already typing, then why would he need to do spelling and tapping on a board? What's the difference, right?
Um,
Um,
yeah.
Go ahead, you can answer that.
So with the typing, he and even now we've presented a keyboard to him, and he said that his goal is to get to a keyboard and independent typing, but that when he's on a keyboard, he's looping. He's typing in things that
Wow.
he's used to typing, whether it's searches on YouTube or, or looking for things to buy. He's always coming to me with something he wants to purchase from eBay or from Amazon. So those are the habits, those are the patterns,
Hmm.
and he's not typing anything cognitively in there. He'll grab my phone and sometimes look for something on Amazon. So he can get in his head like, okay, I want a DVD specifically Harry Potter, let's just say, and he'll type that in. But if you were to say like, when I say like you already have this Harry Potter DVD, that doesn't matter, So that's part of the body disconnect. But so yes, he can type. He knows the letters. He knows where to find them, but it's not connecting cognitively to what he wants to say. So using the letter boards, and since we're backing up and kind of explaining it for people who might not have heard it, the spelling before, is they're using their gross motor skill. So we take it out of the fingers and we move it into
Right, this movement.
yeah.
Hmm.
So all they're doing is needing to move one arm, and they'll use a pointer of some kind typically, and they start with the alphabet broken down into three boards, and it is alphabetical. And it's very intentional so that starting with the three boards, you only have 8 or 9 letters on each board. And the targets are fairly big. So each letter is a fairly big target. And they use a pointer that can go through the stencil. And so that it can be very definite that this is what they're selecting. Sometimes it's tactile, they'll kind of tap the board or something. But there's only a few letters to choose from. So cognitively, I'm not needing to find, letters on a keyboard that have a lot of other keys on there as well. And I don't even have 26 letters to pick from. I've only got 8 or 9. And so when they're working with those 3 letter boards, there's only, they need to work with what we say are known answers or known spelled words. And so they'll use lessons in the sessions. And it's not, and everybody's like, well, and I've even questioned this, like we call them lessons, but we're really not teaching them. We're not testing them. We're coaching their body, just like somebody would be coaching somebody how to play baseball or how to play the piano, or how to dance. We're needing to coach their body to accomplish the target. And so if they're spelling the word dog, they're going to need to, the practitioner is going to need to find the board that has the D, and then the one with the O, and then the one with the G. And the speller is going to need to accurately get their body to that point. But because of apraxia, it's sometimes very difficult for them to do that. What's really interesting is, for me, I almost always was on the opposite side. Like a lot of times in the movie, like you see the parents sitting off to the side or in back of. In my house where it was positioned, Tyler was sitting on the other side of a table and I couldn't sit behind him. So I would sit aside from it. And I, from very early on, could see that he was finding those letters on the board and then poking it. Now, sometimes he was finding the letter on the board and then poking over here. And it was crazy because I'm like, okay, you're looking here, but you're pointing here. And that's the apraxia. And so once they are able to get to the correct letters accurately, consistently, and without any coaching, because at first we're like, okay, you're not at the letter. move over, look around, move to the left. You might give a lot of verbal instructions or even pointing. Once they're able to get to those letters independently on their own, accurately 90+% of the time, then you're moving to the 26 letter board. And the 26 letter board, you've got not 8 or 9 choices, you've got 26. And Tyler never used flats, which that's a whole nother thing. But the targets are much smaller. So you're going from a target that's fairly big to one that's, more than half smaller. And so now you're needing to kind of start over with the coaching. They might need a little more coaching on getting to the right letters. The laminate is same thing, but on, just, do I have it? I don't think I have one handy. I should have brought some for visuals, but the laminate is just a piece of paper that's been laminated with the alphabet on one side and the numbers on the other side. And the letters are, again, even smaller. And then if you think about a keyboard, I mean, what is that? Like the size of the tip of my thumb. Mm-hmm. So when you have somebody who has apraxia and they're having a hard time pointing to even a letter like this, and now you're saying, like, why aren't they just going straight to the keyboard? That's going to be very difficult for them on their body. It's also at a different angle. You're flat versus it being upright. I mean, think about like if you're reading a book, most of us don't read a book flat on the table. We're propping it up in some way. So their eyes need to have that as well. And Tyler doesn't seem to have any kind of vision problem. We've asked him about it, and he has said, he doesn't think he does. So there's definitely different stages going through. And like I started to mention, Tyler's been offered the keyboard, and he said he didn't want to do that yet, that it was too loopy. In fact, one of his Speller friends that he is constantly connected to, whole nother topic, right? He has said the same thing. He was working on the keyboard for a little while, and he said, no, I want to go back to the laminate. And one more thing about the boards, they are alphabetical, and that helps in working with the practitioner, especially early on while we're needing to coach their motor before they can, without any prompting or directions to find the letters. If I know you need to spell the word dog, to coach you on how to hit a letter when they're all on the QWERTY board we know where the letters are, but to find that letter, it's going to be much harder than, and especially if you've got it broken up into 3 pieces, it's going to be much easier. Sorry, if it's in alphabetical order. It's already very difficult as a as a practitioner, to keep track of where they need to go, or once they're starting to spell open, of where they're going. And so having it alphabetical helps, I think, both of us in doing that, because people ask that a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then after doing that and working on their lessons and stuff, eventually they work up to being open, which means that they can just have an open conversation, right? And you had mentioned he's not open with you, but he's open with his practitioner, right?
Yeah.
So you can ask him questions when he goes in to see her, and he'll answer through her. Okay.
Yeah, it's the most amazing thing to finally get to know him.
Mm-hmm.
And for him too, is that some of the things that he has spelled is just, now my family's, finally getting to know who I am. And he's been able to request things. So, for example, last summer, we were doing a thing, and one of the other moms kept saying, like, Tyler should come to the surfing with us. Tyler should come surfing with us. It's covered by the regional center. My son loves it. And I'm like, Tyler loves the water, used to love the water. We couldn't get him out of we would go to the ocean in January, his birthday, and it's freezing. The water in California is always cold, but it was freezing. His lips would be blue, his teeth would be chattering, and you couldn't get him out of the water. And then he suddenly, about 7-8 years ago, stopped going in. Whether it was the pool or the ocean, he stopped going in. And it always baffled us. And we finally because of spelling, he said, no, I want to go in the water. My body just won't let me, it won't let me get in, which is just so baffling. And so even though I knew that about the swimming, that he's like, okay, you need to have something to entice me to get into the pool. We hadn't translated that to the ocean. And so one day, it was just like, what are some things, you're not in a day program. What are some things that you want to be doing with your day? And he one day said, I want to look into the surfing program that Aiden's in. I think that and he continued to spell, I think that the instructors will know how to coach my body to do that. And so I'm in the session texting, texting his mom and saying, hey, Tyler has said he wants to do the surfing now. Where I all summer, this was like October, all summer, I'm like, nope, he's not even going to get in. We're not even going to hassle with it.
I know it's so crazy because if you go by what you see on the outside, you think, oh no, he doesn't want to do this. He hates this, and you would never sign him up for it. And meanwhile, I always say it's like there's two different people going on. Is the body does one thing and their mind is saying something completely different. We just watched last week, I had an event and there was a speller there, and he was saying things, nonsense out of his mouth, and not even looking at the board and tapping out, all just having these profound conversations with people while he's saying nonsense. And and special ed teachers were there, and they were seeing this for the first time, and their jaws just dropped. And I said,
Yeah.
now I want you to think about that. Think about all your students. You can't rely on anything that comes out of their mouth or their behavior or what they do. It's unbelievable. So, all
Well,
right. I
yeah,
saw your post that he was surfing.
so he's now surfing, and yeah, and so that was one of the things. He also had said a while back that he wanted to go to the gym, and my husband works out, and so I kept trying. So he's been taking him to the gym, but he typically gets on the treadmill, and I keep saying, like, well, the treadmill is really just it could just be a loop, right? You're
Mm.
just yeah, it's good exercise, but you're not really having to think about it and really control your muscles in order to do the treadmill. And so Tyler had even said, I want to work out with weights. And so because he wasn't doing the weights properly, and my husband didn't know, like, we didn't know yet, like, how to coach the the motor and break it down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, he wouldn't do the weights with him. So now they're doing that, but he also we've gotten him with a with a coach, that has been doing more heavy weights and things too. And Tyler has said that that has really helped him with controlling his body better. He's also requested art lessons, and so that's where, and so there's his fish, but he's and we've talked about putting his art into a book with some of his words. So just another project to add to the list, for advocating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's been able to request what he wants to do, where before we were just guessing. And here's the funny thing. I've mentioned Legos a few times. Lego, you're not supposed to put the S on there. For Christmas, he got a couple of Lego from family, because that's what everybody always, we always thought he wanted. And I realized, like, a month later, I was like, I haven't seen those added to your collection in your room. Where is that? And I found them in a cabinet in his bedroom. And so we asked him about it. He said, I've finally been able to get my body. I haven't been into Lego in a while, and I finally have got my body to stop building
Okay.
them. Just weird, right?
Mhm.
Like that. If you put a set in front of him, he's going to build it. But when he had that choice, um, he finally, he was like, nope, I'm really not that interested in it anymore. Uh, Something else that he said he's finally been able to get his body to do. So, a lot of the families will talk about, like, what are some things that, cognitively that, we can have playing, or for them to listen to, or whatever. And something that has come up is a website called Crash Course. And it's amazing because they have so many different topics and lessons broken down into 15, 20-minute videos on YouTube. And everything and it's meant for like high school, college level, not kiddie level. And so it's biology and anatomy and physics and all kinds of stuff, great stuff, history, and so you can really dig into things. And you might have 30 or 40 lessons on each topic. So I would play it in the car because he has said many times that when he is getting dysregulated, that having things that activate the cognition help him, to regulate. So a lot of times if we're going somewhere and he's starting to get into his verbal loops, I'll turn on a crash course or something. And about 2 weeks ago, my husband noticed, he's like, oh, he's in his room and he's got crash course going. And I was like, well, that's fantastic. Like we encouraged him to do that a number of times and he never did. And so we did ask him to spell about that the other day with his practitioner. And he said, I'm finally able to get my body to pull up crash course. He said, but right now, basically, he doesn't have, he can get to the crash course, but he hasn't been able to like pick the topics. Because I'm like, what are you studying right now? What are you listening to? And he's like, right now, it's like whatever I can get to, like whatever happens to pop up, he'll just pick. So we'll keep working on helping him get there with that. But
what are his goals? Awesome. I know that he is he's doing the art because I'm friends with you on Facebook, so I see these things. I see him surfing. I saw you coaxing him to get into the water in Palm Springs with the pretzels and the Nutella, which is funny. And now he's putting his art on T-shirts. Right. And it's spelling themed. So I love the fish behind you. I actually had you move it so it would appear. Yeah, the other way. Yeah. So it would appear on the screen.
Yeah, I haven't asked him if he's got a caption for that one yet. Yeah. In fact, I had pulled up a couple of like.
There you go.
So
Hop on board. Yeah, that one's really cute.
Stickers and T-shirts. Because I asked him if he wanted me to somehow incorporate, to use it to advocate. Because that is. So his goal is advocacy for spellers. He does want to bring a voice to others. And so I've started keeping a list of the people that we know specifically that have started spelling because of him, locally. And he's up to 7. I'm so excited for him. Mm-hmm. And he was just asked this question a couple of days ago, and he said his goals, his long-term goals are to be able to type independently for communication and to graduate from college.
What does he want to study?
That answer keeps changing.
He's not sure.
So
okay.
I'm not sure. And
but he's doing a pottery class right now, so that's art.
Right now we're doing ceramics, and he's taken a number of ceramics in high school. So, but yeah, we're working on a pottery wheel, which is just crazy. And he had spelled, he's excited because he thinks I'm having to do a lot of that step-by-step constant coaching with him right now, but I can see even just after a couple of days of doing it that he's getting better and better at being able to do that by himself.
Great.
Hopefully soon. So it's not as easy as it looks. But he knows that he has said he wants his spelling to be more robust. And I don't think he needs to be or wants to be independent before he continues with classes that require grades and, the testing and grades. But he did take a biology and a history class and did the testing where his practitioner came in for those, for the tests.
Mm-hmm.
And he did probably like 60%, on the grading. But he's like, that's not a reflection of what I actually know. And it was interesting because the multiple choice questions, he scored worse on than the open answers, where he was needing to write out a couple of sentences or a paragraph about something. Mm-hmm. So again, the apraxia is still taking over, even on,
right.
Even though he's open. I said, those damn multiple choice questions trick me all the time too. So that's not necessarily.
So, but he's open with his practitioner. So to do college, he has to work with her to answer the questions.
So for the testing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way it works here, the colleges, at least our local community college, has been awesome. They have a department that helps define the accommodations needed and then communicate those to the professors. And the professors have all been very open, even though many of them have not had a non-speaker in their class. They've been very understanding and wanting to learn, more about, him and what he's doing. They do not in any way provide help. We still have to, find somebody to attend class with him as his assistant, or like with the testing, we're needing to provide all that. And we thought this year we had somebody to attend the ceramics class with him, but their schedule changed. And so I'm attending class with him, which I like to.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
But he doesn't really want to be going to school with mom. But as far as like their attitude and their acceptance and their willingness to, accept the letter boards, they're like, okay, if that's how he needs to do his tests, his practitioner can't attend any classes with him because they do want to make sure that whoever is, that when he's taking the test, that it's his knowledge, not theirs, right? And that they're not in any way influencing his answers. Right. And they also have somebody else in the room who is basically proctoring the test. I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, but they'll, instead of the practitioner reading the test and reading like the multiple choice answers or whatever that are available, the person proctoring the test will read through everything and then record whatever answer that she has given, as his answer.
Interesting.
So, so in that way, they've been accommodated. Obviously, and I talked to another local mom whose son was in classes at the same school, and she had said that, it's just, he's not taking, and I don't anticipate that. I mean, it could be a while for him to do it, where he's taking more than maybe one or two classes like that, where it's requiring homework and reports or testing or anything like that in a semester, because it just takes so much more effort, for him, even just fill out an answer. But he did in his biology class a year and a half ago. He was the very first day they said, you're going to need to do a group project on something, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, crap. Like, I knew something like that could be part of it, but I wasn't thinking about the very first class, that he's in is going to be asking for something like this. But approached the professor and said, look, Tyler's not going to be able at this point to do a group project. And he's a non-speaker. He identifies as a non-speaker. Yes, he can talk, but he identifies as a non-speaker. And I said, so, what are the options? She said, well, then I'm fine if he does an individual project. And, how would he then communicate it? I said, well, we can put his presentation together and I can read it, or we can have somebody else come in and read it for him. And so we did put together a biology presentation, and he had chosen the topic of apraxia. And he said specifically, because I want other students to know, that although it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, or because it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, they think I don't belong here. And I want them to understand that, that I do understand what's going on. It's just that I can't get my body to do it. And we had very good feedback from the teacher, from the students and everything. And he felt really good about it afterwards. So.
That's good. Yeah. So now he's not open with you. Are you not regulated? Is that this is what I hear from the parents, and that many times they need to be regulated, or else the kids can't spell with them. The parents get too excited.
Yeah. There's so many things with that. I tried in the first, 4 to 6 months of doing the boards with him, and and we had some success, and we would do it with the practitioner. And when she was there across the table from us, he was able to go through, the lessons, and, with the set known words and questions. I tried doing it without him, or without her. And there were moments of where he would get dysregulated, or where his mouth was saying things, or just saying, no, no spelling, no spelling, no spelling. And Tyler went through a few years of being very self-injurious, and also intermittently aggressive to me. And it did end up with some injuries. And so when he would start to get dysregulated, yes, I would get very anxious and scared and dysregulated myself. There's also the other piece that you said, like excited, is that our practitioner had said that many spellers have said that it's hard to spell. Like, the person they want to spell with most is mom. So their excitement level is already high, but also that mom wants to spell. And so our excitement level is high. And even when there's the tiniest little success, it's like, and you're like wanting to jump out of your skin, but you're needing to stay calm. Well, then add in, since you followed Tyler, follow me on and Tyler's stuff, he has spelled quite a bit about how much he feels the emotions and processes the emotions. And that even if you're trying to hide your emotions, he's like, you can't fool me. He's like, I know if you're faking it, if you're upset or angry or excited, and you're trying to hide it, I can still feel it. And I also throw out there, when people talk about it, is that it's also, I think, as parents, not just moms, but as parents, there's so many things we want to ask that are incredibly personal. And when you think about it, I mean, my son's 23, but, when I was 23, I'm close to my mom, but I was not open with my mom. There's certain things you talked about with mom, and there's things you talk about with your friends. And I definitely was not open with my mom. And if she asked me a question, I wasn't giving, it. Well, so is he. They're going to do that too. As much as they might want to talk to us, there's going to be things that they don't want to tell us, or that they're afraid, to tell us. So there's so much that goes into it, but a lot of it is one, the regulation. And for me, it was PTSD. I mean, there still is, but I can catch myself much faster now. So I have been working with them much more regularly. I try to sit down daily. It doesn't happen daily. I did do the practitioner's course with the spellers, not with IASC, but which is meant more for parents or communication partners, not to work with others, but to work with your speller specifically. And that really helped me. And when I told him that I was going to do it, he was like, I think it'd be great for you so that you can get more confidence in it. And I do feel that way, is that now when we sit down to spell, I'm not as, I don't question myself as much about what I'm doing, and having more fun with it. And I think that's really important too, is that I think that when I saw the practitioners or, people on the movie, and they're just so smooth, and they can follow along with every letter when they're open, and I get lost, and then I start getting anxious about it. And it's just, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to, and we shouldn't be stressed about it. I was definitely stressed about it, and I feel much better now. I was getting there, but I think that taking the course helped me a lot. And it's also kind of reteaching, some of the things that my practitioner had already explained about apraxia and how the brain's wired, and and why we're using the boards in this order, all the little things that you probably hear early on but don't get repeated. And as you start working with your kid, it just helps helps with the confidence and helps you feel more relaxed.
And so, and you mentioned the intuition, and they're very sensitive to people's emotions and stuff. I don't know if you want to talk about this. You alluded to it before, but are you seeing telepathy with him? Because when
Not
you were mentioning testing, that is something that comes at like they want to know, is this really his answers, right?
right.
And I've watched it. I saw it last week when this boy was spelling with his mom. She was saying the words as he was spelling them, but she was finishing it before he even finished the word. She was saying, like, she already knew what he was saying before he even finished spelling it out. So I know that they're connected telepathically. But does he have a friend? It sounds like he has a friend that he's connected
Yeah.
with.
Um, yeah, he has, even before telepathy tapes, there were a few things that he had said that, there were some things that he had said that made me think like, okay, he's seeing things and feeling things that the rest of us don't. And one of the things that came up early was that that he has felt influenced by spirits, and not always good spirits. So he hasn't talked about angels, and we've asked him about that, and he's like, not angels but spirits. And so we've done a lot of praying about that. We have a lot of faith in this house, uh, and he had said that praying helps keep the bad ones away. But he has said that he can see into other realms, and he speaks a lot about autistics as a collective. Are you a Star Trek fan by any chance?
Well, I mean, I remember Star Trek when I was
Oh,
a
okay.
kid.
There's there's this there's this one species, or I don't know, that in Star Trek, and they call them the Borg. And the Borg, as they conquer other worlds, other species, they assimilate them into their collective, and they all share the same thoughts. So as I assimilate you, I now know all of your history and your education and somebody else. And so they call it the collective. And I kind of feel like there's a collective, that some of what they know, how did you know? Because you haven't even been exposed to it. And I know all these different things, but he talks a lot like as a collective. Like, I can see into other realms as many autistics can. Like, I'm like, how do you know? You haven't talked to any other autistics, unless you have been able to read their minds, right? So even before telepathy tapes, he made references to things. He has said that he can remote view, and he said that a year and a half ago, and didn't really know what remote viewing was. So I asked him about 6 months ago to define remote viewing, not necessarily in relationship to him. I was just like, define remote viewing. And he said it's being able to see everything that somebody else sees, thinks, and feels. My definition of remote viewing is being able to, like they say, like somebody can be sitting here and thousands of miles away be visualizing what somebody else is seeing in another room.
Right. They drop in and they can see what you see, but I didn't know also thinking and feeling.
And so
Yeah.
Tyler says it also included the thinks and feels. So then we asked him, who can you do that with? And so that's where he has been open with me on stuff that's not personal. When I moved it to personal and said, who can you do this with? He said, Dad, and then wouldn't go any further.
Huh.
So then with his practitioner, we said, okay, so who can you do this with? And he said, anybody that I am emotionally close to, and distance doesn't matter. And so then we also asked, is there anything we should be concerned about? That if you're connecting, if you're remote viewing with myself or Dad or, somebody else, is like what we're doing, what we're watching, what we're reading, what conversations that we're having, like, should we be, worried about that? And he said, no. He said, I respect people's privacy. I usually only do it when I need to understand a situation. Which I thought was interesting. So it's like, okay, so he can turn it on and off as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then one of his friends was asked because they had spent an afternoon together. And, at one point, everybody's in the room, parents and our two boys together. And, then it got to a point where, his friend went into one room and Tyler was in the family room. And they're doing different things and said, they had asked his friend, what's up with that? He's like, oh, we don't need to be in the same room or even in the same location to be communicating. He said, communicating on the boards is nice, but he's like, that's not how we really communicate.
Yeah, they don't need that.
Which is funny because they've had conversations, but I've now noticed like their conversations are actually very like what I'm going to now say are practiced.
Yeah.
It's like they'll be like, hey, it's good to see you again.
Yes.
How's
Yes, that's what I'm seeing. It's like,
what are you
hi,
working
how
on?
are you today? It's like a letter. Yeah.
It's almost like ABA, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's learned
And
behavior.
so I even the last time said, don't bother with the niceties. Just get into what do you guys want to talk about? Like,
Right.
And but then with them saying like, okay, we don't need the letterboards to talk, to communicate. Yeah. We're already doing it constantly. They see each other physically once every 4 to 6 weeks, maybe. We would like it to be more, but yeah, they're like, we're, and then the question was like, what are you guys talking about? What are you communicating about? And they said, we help each other with our challenges. And we talk about languages. And Tyler has said that he, something that he learns very easily is languages.
So does he know multiple?
He claims, well, I shouldn't say he claims, he knows. He has said that he knows most languages. And he said, except Russian, which he said was simply because he hasn't been exposed to it. So again, but I'm thinking like, okay, he since he was 6 or 7 years old, he would change the language on my phone. He would change the language on the TV, not just like the captions, or the audio. He would change the language of the TV. So we didn't know how to change the TV back to English. Like, so the whatever. And we'd have to ask him, come in, and he'd know exactly where to go. And so he's done that since very little. And we thought that it was just like more he knows, like, okay, the third one down is language or whatever. But yeah, he would change languages constantly. And so, and I have found a number of times, like I'll log into Netflix and it'll be on like Portuguese on the captions, but the audio might be in Croatian. I mean, if there's multiple languages available, and I've told a lot of family, like, just do it. Like, even if it's just the captions at the bottom, if you don't need the captions to read, like now that your spellers can read, you don't need the captions to start with, but put a different language, because just increasing that cognitive level is a good thing for their body regulation. But they're constantly learning, and yeah, we have no idea, what they're, how they're processing and taking things in. For his birthday and Christmas this last year, his birthday's early January, so kind of the same thing, right? We said, what do you want for your birthday and Christmas? And he said, I want Bibles in ancient languages, and specifically named Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. And then he said, and I also want an Ethiopian Bible, which is in, like, I think the language of that is Ge'ez or something. It's also very common in English. In fact, I think I posted it, and somebody in the spellers group said, I can get you an Ethiopian Bible from my church. So we're starting to build a collection of Bibles in ancient languages for him.
Wow. So
yeah, we just never know. One day we went to watch the Spellers movie. Somebody was, putting it on probably about a year and a half ago, at one of the local temples. And we had already seen the movie when it first came out. It came out a few months after he started spelling. And so cute. So he's seeing the movie for the very first time, and I'm sitting a few rows behind him. He's sitting with one of his respite girls. And multiple times through the movie, he was just like, just fists up in the air, like 2 or 3 times, like, yes, yes. And I like was so happy, so excited for him and for everybody else. But so we went to, about a year later, another one. I don't think my sister had seen it yet. So we had invited her, and just to be there as support, for the local community. And as he's sitting, sitting there with the film going, he's flipping through one of the books, that was there in the,
At the temple. Yeah.
yeah, at the temple. And I had joked with my sister. I said, he's learning Hebrew right now.
Yeah.
And then as the film's going, he's wandering around and checking out. They had all kinds of dedication plaques and other things, and he's studying all of them. And I did ask him the next day. I said, what languages, do you know right now? And he had said Latin, Chinese, like he didn't say Mandarin, but Chinese, Hebrew, and he listed 2 or 3 others. And that's when he said, I know most languages except Russian, because I haven't been exposed. So,
Wow.
but then he also spelled a few months ago, you used to think that that I wasn't, I wish I could pull it up real quick, but basically it was like, you used to think that I was below average intelligence, and now you think I'm above average intelligence. And he's like, I'm really just average. And I thought that was so, like, I'm like, no, you're not.
No, the average person can't learn all those different languages. No.
Right.
I know, I certainly can't.
Or anything. Like, we ask him questions that I'm like, I don't even, there's been so many times, like you mentioned with the telepathy, that's part of, the people. I don't feel a direct connection like that. I can read him. I do sometimes question, especially when I'm doing the spelling with him. He will misspell words the way that I misspell words.
Oh.
And when he's with his practitioner, he's not misspelling the words. I did ask him the other day, because there was something that he answered that I was like, how did you, like, I forget what it was, but it was a really odd answer that I didn't even really know. So I'm thinking, like, okay, did you read my mind? Because, I'm trying to make sure you get the right answer, because I don't even really know this one. And he said, no, I read the lesson. And so that's where, like, he just flips the pages and he reads. So he doesn't read the same way we do. I wouldn't call it, he doesn't call it photographic memory, but he does say that when he sees something, he processes it and files it away by category to recall later as needed. And so I kind of vision it like my computer, that you file different things in files and you know where to find it when you need it. But he flips through books. He was asked, if you were going somewhere and needed to take books with you, what books would you take? And he said, just anything I haven't already read. So, just constantly being exposed to new things. He loves going to the library and just flipping through random books. So yeah, who knows what's in that beautiful mind.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we've been on here a long time. I have to do another.
I know. It's been
I have to do
wonderful
another
talking to you.
interview, otherwise I would stay on, longer, because now we've hit that zone of the amazing, mind-blowing things that they can do. All right, how can people get a hold of you if they want to buy shirts or any of the gift items that he makes?
If you're on Facebook, Judy Stoltz, and the t-shirts are on Bonfire. I think my store is called Spell It Out. And but for, like, cards or posters or stickers, send me a note. Or
I think you need to make a Facebook page, because it's free. So you don't have to do a website. A lot of businesses don't even do websites anymore. They just create a Facebook page, and then people spell it out, and put all his stuff on there with a link.
Yeah. And he's starting to do, he had said he wants to do an advice column for parents. He's started answering some questions that people have submitted to me on Facebook.
Then he needs a page. He needs his page.
I know I need to, just one more thing to do.
Yeah. So, all right, Judy, thanks so much for coming on here today. I really appreciate it. And I've learned some new things. I've learned new things each time.
Well, thank you so much for the time. And yeah, you're going to need to edit a lot out.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for being here today. And
Thank you so much.
tell
And
Tyler we said thanks for letting us talk about him.
yeah, you know what? Today he spelled something that was fairly personal to a new friend. And I said, are you okay with us, sharing this? And he said, I'm an open book. You can share anything.
Oh, good.
So,
That's great.
and his whole point from the beginning has been if it helps others to learn more about him, if it helps others to learn more about me, or others like me, please share. And so that's why I've been doing what I've been doing. And because, everybody needs a voice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do. Give them a voice.
Enjoy your weekend.
Okay.
And,
Thanks. You too.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. To learn more about our children's book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, or to learn more about what we do at Robbie's World Foundation, simply visit our website at robbiesworldbook.com.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.